Okay, so picture this. That really vibrant green drink, the one that seems to be absolutely everywhere now.
Oh, yeah. Social media feeds, cafes, the modern matcha latte. You can't miss it.
You've definitely seen it, probably maybe even tried it. It's super trendy.
It really is.
But what is it? This like emerald green powder, really? Is it just another health fad or is there, something more to it?
That's exactly the question we wanted to dig into for you. We've got, well, quite a stack of sources here. Articles, some really interesting research papers, even some pretty lively online discussions,
Right.
all diving into matcha's history, what makes it unique, how you can spot the good stuff versus the not so good, and what the science is actually saying, or hinting at maybe, both human and animal studies.
So our mission for this deep dive is really to cut through the noise,
Sure.
get to the core facts from these materials and help you understand what's actually going on with matcha.
Exactly. We'll take a journey, starting way back with its ancient roots, uncover some secrets behind quality, talk about how you should prepare it for, like, the real deal. Yeah.
And then look at what the research landscape actually shows for potential health benefits.
Okay, sounds good. Let's unpack this.
So first off, while it feels very current, very now, matcha's story, it goes way, way back. The sources tell us it actually started in China, Tang Dynasty. So centuries ago.
Wow, okay. Not Japan originally.
But originally, no.
Yeah.
Powdered green tea started there. But then, and here's where it gets really interesting, according to the material, Chinese monks traveled to Japan, this was around the 12th century, and they brought Buddhism with them and this tradition of powdered green tea.
Ah, okay, that's the connection.
That seems to be the turning point. In Japan, this ritualized use of powdered tea by monks, it just evolved massively. It spread to the upper classes, maybe by the 15th century.
Yeah.
And over hundreds of years, Japan developed this incredibly intricate tea ceremony, Saido, it's called.
Right, the famous tea ceremony. Centered specifically around matcha. And that deep history of cultivation, the ceremony, the refinement in Japan, that's why we associate matcha so strongly with Japan today.
Yeah.
The sources really emphasize its roots in purity, respect, that whole mindset.
Okay, so let's nail down exactly what it is. Based on these sources, fundamentally, what is matcha?
At its core, it's still green tea. Same plant, Camellia sinensis, like all tea. But the huge difference, and the sources are clear on this, isn't just the leaf, it's the process.
How so?
Instead of steeping leaves or a bag and then taking them out, matcha is made from these specially grown leaves that are ground into an incredibly fine powder.
So you don't discard anything. You whisk the powder in and you drink the entire leaf.
You got it. You consume the whole thing.
That feels like a pretty significant difference right away.
It absolutely is. And it connects directly to its unique properties, its taste, and potentially its effects. The sources really detail this unique cultivation and processing. For starters, the tea bushes, the ones destined for matcha, they're shaded.
Shaded, like covered up.
Yeah, kept out of direct sunlight for a good chunk of their growing time before harvest, usually a few weeks.
Okay. Why do they do that? What does shading do?
Well, the material explains that shading puts a specific kind of stress on the plant, and that makes it produce more of certain compounds inside the leaves.
Ah, interesting. Like what?
Specifically, it boosts amino acids, especially one called L-theanine, and it dramatically increases chlorophyll content.
Which gives it that crazy bright green color.
Exactly, that's the chlorophyll. And the theanine, along with other compounds, contributes to that richer, less bitter, sometimes savory or umami flavor you get in the really high-quality stuff.
Okay, so shading is step one. What happens after they pick the leaves?
Well, they pick only the youngest, best leaves, and then, crucially, they're immediately steamed.
Steamed? To cook them?
No, to stop oxidation. It halts the enzymes that would turn the leaves brown, like with black tea. It preserves that greenness and the fresh compounds. Then they carefully remove all the stems and veins.
So just a pure leaf meat, basically.
Pretty much. That material is called tencha, and that's what gets ground. Traditionally, using these big granite or stone mills, really slowly.
Slowly. Why slowly?
To keep it cool. Grinding generates heat, and too much heat can actually degrade the delicate flavors and some of the beneficial compounds. So slow stone grinding preserves the quality.
Okay, so shade, pick young leaves, steam, destem, devein, stone grind into a fine powder, and then you drink the whole thing.
Got it. How does all that impact the actual chemistry compared to just, steeping regular green tea?
Right, this is where that unique process really translates into chemistry, according to the research we looked at. Because you're ingesting the entire leaf, you're getting much higher concentrations of, well, pretty much everything beneficial compared to just the water extract from steep leaves.
So more of those amino acids, like the theanine.
Yep, higher amino acids, which gives that umami flavor. Higher caffeine, too, typically, because it comes from those young, potent buds and leaves. And way more chlorophyll, as we said.
What about catechins, those famous green tea antioxidants, EGCG and all that? Good question. And the research here has a really interesting kind of counterintuitive point, the shading itself. It actually lowers the concentration of some catechins in the dry leaf compared to sun-grown tea.
Oh, so less antioxidants.
In the leaf, yes, slightly lower levels of some catechins. BUT, and this is the key thing the sources highlight, because you grind that entire shaded leaf into powder and whisk it all into the water.
You end up drinking more of them anyway.
Exactly. The amount you ingest ends up being significantly higher. One source mentioned you could get up to 3 times more catechins, especially EGCG, that's the main one, compared to what you'd typically extract from steeping loose-leaf green tea. It's about getting the whole package.
Ah, okay, so it's not just what's in the dry leaf, but what actually makes it into your cup when you prepare it to the powder. That makes sense.
Precisely. And one study even pointed out that the stuff that doesn't fully dissolve, the water-insoluble residue, mostly fibers, seems to contribute significantly to the potential health benefits, too. It's really a whole lift situation.
Okay, this totally explains why quality must be such a massive deal with matcha if the process is that specific. You can't just fake it with any old green powder. The sources really seem to emphasize this buyer beware aspect.
They absolutely did. Its popularity means the market is flooded. And a lot of what's sold, it's not traditional high-quality matcha. The material gives some pretty clear flags to watch out for.
Like, rule number 1 seems to be matcha has to be a fine powder.
Right.
Never loose leaf, never in a tea bag.
Right.
And it's not raw either.
Correct. And look for the label matcha specifically. Be careful with things just called powdered green tea or powdered sencha. They're different, usually made from leaves not grown or processed with the same care.
And the big one, ingredients. If it says premium or ceremonial, but then lists sugar.
Run away. Yeah, one source literally said run for the hills. High-quality matcha shouldn't need added sugar. If it's sweetened, it's almost certainly a lower grade designed for lattes or baking, not for drinking straight.
Price can be a hint, too, apparently.
It often is, yeah, though not always perfect. The sources kind of ballparked good quality stuff, the kind you'd whisk with water, at maybe around $30 for a small 30-gram tin. So like $1 a gram.
Okay.
Whereas the sweetened lower grade stuff should be way cheaper, maybe 10 cents a gram, something like that.
And you can tell by looking and smelling it.
Definitely. Good matcha should be a really vibrant electric green, almost unnaturally bright, and the powder should feel super fine, almost like talc.
Silky.
Yeah, silky. And the smell should be fresh, grassy, maybe a little bit sweet or vegetal. If it looks pale or kind of yellowish or khaki, or smells dull, fishy, or musty, that's usually a sign of lower quality. Or maybe it's old.
The online chats we looked at, like on Reddit, people really seem to get this distinction. They were pretty vocal about the difference between, real matcha and the stuff in lattes or bottles.
Oh, yeah. Very clear divide. Some of the comments were quite direct, calling the stuff in chain cafes or bottled drinks tea sawdust, or saying it just relies on sugar and hype.
Yeah, I saw that. And they mentioned bottled teas can oxidize easily and taste acidic because of preservatives like citric acid. Makes sense.
The general vibe was definitely, if you want the real deal, the complex flavor, the higher concentration of compounds, you probably need to shell out a bit more for good powder.
They talked about grades too, right? Culinary versus ceremonial.
Culinary grade is more robust, maybe a bit more bitter. It's fine for cooking, baking, smoothies, where that bitterness can cut through sweetness or other flavors. But ceremonial grade is the top tier, meant for whisking with hot water and drinking straight, appreciating its nuances.
And origin came up too. Japan seemed preferred.
Yeah, Japan was consistently mentioned as the gold standard, especially regions like Uji or Nishio, known for their long history and expertise. It all comes back to that careful cultivation, the shading, using only young growth and the processing, especially stone grinding.
Shelf life was another point. Once you open it, use it relatively quickly.
Right. It's sensitive to air, light, heat. It loses that vibrancy and fresh flavor pretty fast once the tin is opened. Oxidation is the enemy.
And the taste descriptions really drove home the quality difference. People described high-quality matcha as, like, smooth, vegetal, rich, naturally sweet sometimes, definitely umami, grassy, nutty, even floral. Creamy texture, too, if made right.
Whereas the lower quality stuff got described as just plain, bitter, harsh, earthy in a bad way. like dirt or old grass clippings.
Although some people seem to like a bit of earthiness or grassiness, depending on what they're used to or pairing it with.
Yeah.
But yeah, the overwhelming message was that intense, unpleasant bitterness usually signals lower quality or maybe bad preparation.
Exactly. Which brings us right to the next crucial piece, how you actually make it. Even the best powder can taste bad if you don't prepare it correctly.
Right. It's not just dumping powder into boiling water, is it?
Definitely not. The core technique involves whisking the powder vigorously into water to create a smooth, kind of frothy suspension. No lumps.
And the water temperature. That seems super important in the sources. Not boiling.
Absolutely critical. You want warm water, not boiling hot. The ideal range mentioned was around 70 to 80 degrees Celsius. That's about 160 to 175 Fahrenheit.
Okay, much cooler than for black tea.
Much cooler. If you use boiling water, like 90, 100 Celsius or near boiling Fahrenheit, it basically scorches the delicate powder. It extracts way too much bitterness and kills the subtle flavors.
Makes sense. Some sources even suggested making a paste first.
Yeah, mixing the powder with a tiny bit of cold or room temperature water first to make a smooth paste, then adding the warm water. It helps prevent clumping.
And the whisk, the bamboo one.
The chasen, yeah, that traditional bamboo whisk with all the fine tines. It's specifically designed to break up clumps and whip air into the matcha, creating that nice, smooth, frothy layer on top. Really helps the texture and incorporates the powder evenly.
But if you don't have one?
The sources suggested a small electric milk frother can work as a decent home substitute. It won't be exactly the same texture, but it gets the job done for mixing it well.
Okay, so getting good powder and making it right warm water, whisking well, seems to be the path to that authentic matcha experience, which sounds pretty different from a lot of the green lattes out there.
Totally different. Different taste, different texture, different focus.
Right. So moving beyond the taste and the tradition, there's obviously a ton of buzz around matcha and health. What did the research we looked at actually indicate about potential effects?
Well, green tea in general has been studied a lot for health benefits, as you know. And because matcha involves consuming the whole leaf, the sources basically position it as a more concentrated form. You're getting more of those compounds.
More antioxidants?
Potentially, yeah. One study mentioned matcha could have significantly higher antioxidant activity than regular brewed green tea because you ingest everything. Those polyphenols, especially catechins like EGCG, make up a surprisingly large part of matcha's dry weight.
The research review we read seemed really interesting, but it also had some important caveats, right?
Yeah.
About the state of the human research.
Exactly. The review was quite careful to point out that for matcha specifically, a lot of the human studies are still somewhat limited. Often small sample sizes, maybe different methods used across studies, so it's hard to draw really strong, definitive conclusions just yet, especially for things like cognitive function or anti-cancer effects in humans.
But animal studies look more consistent.
Generally, yes. The results in animal models, mostly mice in the studies we saw, tended to show more consistent positive outcomes. But, of course, those findings always need careful confirmation in human trials.
Okay, keeping those limitations in mind, what are the main areas researchers are looking into? Let's start with maybe cognitive function, brain health, stress.
Sure. The material definitely links key compounds in matcha caffeine, that L-theanine we mentioned, and EGCG to potential effects on the brain.
What have human studies hinted at?
Well, there are some hints. One small study found participants reported lower stress and anxiety after having 3 grams of matcha daily for 15 days. Another study looking at a single dose found, like slight improvements in attention speed and working memory.
Okay, small effects.
Yeah, and another suggested continuous intake might enhance performance under stress. But again, the human data isn't all pointing one way. Some studies found no real effect on mood or fatigue. It's still an emerging picture in humans.
What about the animal studies in this area? More promising.
They did seem more consistent, yeah. In mice, various studies showed matcha consumption seemed to reduce biological markers of stress, help protect brain function against things like vascular aging, and even improve memory and learning, particularly in mice-fed high-fat diets.
Interesting. How might it be working? Any ideas on the mechanisms?
The research suggests a few possibilities. Compounds like EGCG might have neuroprotective effects. Theanine is structurally similar to glutamate, a key neurotransmitter, and seems linked to relaxation and alpha brainwaves. And that combination of caffeine plus theanine is really unique to tea.
Right, the calm alertness idea.
Exactly. You get the focus from caffeine, but the theanine might help smooth out the jitters. Plus, general antioxidant effects protecting the brain, maybe supporting neurotransmitter systems. The animal studies also suggested matcha might help against cognitive issues linked to things like air pollution or inflammation.
So, plausible mechanisms,
Yep.
promising animal data, but human evidence is still developing. Is that a fair summary?
I think that's a fair summary based on the sources we reviewed, yeah.
Okay. What about cardiometabolic health? Things like weight, blood sugar, cholesterol.
This was another area highlighted, but again, based on the specific sources we looked at, the evidence here was primarily from animal studies. We definitely need more research in humans.
Understood. But what were the findings in those animal models?
They were quite interesting. In mouse studies, particularly those using high-fat diet models, matcha consumption, often at low to moderate doses, seemed to help prevent weight gain.
Really? Even on a high-fat diet?
Apparently so, in these specific models. It also seemed to improve several metabolic markers, things like better blood glucose control and healthier lipid profiles, lower total cholesterol, lower triglycerides, lower LDL, the bad cholesterol, sometimes higher HDL, the good cholesterol too.
Fat storage.
Yeah, some studies showed reduced fat accumulation, particularly in the abdomen and liver, and better liver function markers.
Again, in mice, but potentially significant if it translates. Any ideas why?
The sources point towards catechins, especially EGCG, possibly influencing genes involved in fat metabolism. Caffeine might play a role in insulin sensitivity. Theanine could contribute through anti-inflammatory effects or maybe blood pressure regulation. It seems multifaceted.
Okay. And lastly, the sources briefly mentioned potential anti-tumor or anti-cancer effects.
Yes, but it's really important to stress, as the review did, that the evidence provided in these sources was limited to in vitro studies.
Meaning studies on cells in lab tissues.
Exactly, not in whole living organisms, so very preliminary stage.
What did those lab studies show?
In lab settings, using specific types of breast cancer cells, matcha extract was shown to inhibit the growth and survival of those cells. It seemed to interfere with their energy production and key signaling pathways.
And are specific compounds implicated?
The review referenced other literature suggesting EGCG, theanine, and caffeine have shown some anti-cancer activity in various lab or animal studies, but for matcha itself, the review emphasized the need for much more research on different cancer cell types, and crucially, moving into animal models and eventually human studies to see if these lab findings have any relevance at all in a real-world context.
Right. Very early days on that front. Okay, so let's circle back then. We started with that image of the bright green, often super sweet matcha latte that's everywhere. Given everything we've just discussed, the history, the careful processing, the quality factors, this evolving research, what does it all tell us about that typical cafe latte experience?
Well, it tells us it's often something quite different. Different from the traditional high-quality matcha that the sources describe as the real deal.
How so?
Those lattes, they frequently prioritize sweetness and that bright color. They often use lower-grade powder or pre-made mixes with lots of sugar or other fillers. It's just not aiming for the same nuanced flavor profile or delivering the same concentration of compounds as carefully prepared high-grade matcha. It doesn't really represent that 1,000-year Japanese tradition.
So if your main experience with matcha has been, kind of bitter or maybe muddy tasting or just tasting mostly like milk and sugar.
Yeah, or watery or barely tasting of tea at all.
The sources would suggest that's likely down to either lower quality powder or maybe it wasn't prepared that well. Or both.
Probably both in many cases. The quality of the powder itself and how it's actually prepared, those two things are absolutely key. They directly impact the taste, the texture, and theoretically the concentration of those compounds we've been talking about.
Okay, so summing up this whole deep dive then, we've seen matcha isn't just any green tea. It's unique. Rich history, starting in China, refined into an art in Japan.
With very specific ways of growing it, that shading and processing it, the steaming, grinding that creates a totally distinct chemical profile.
And quality is hugely variable. It makes a massive difference to the taste and likely to what you're actually consuming in terms of those potentially beneficial compounds.
Definitely. And while the human health research is still catching up, it's ongoing, and the animal and lab studies do offer some intriguing hints, especially around cognition, maybe stress resilience, and metabolic health markers. But again, more human data is needed.
Absolutely. Need that human confirmation.
But the big takeaway seems to be your experience and potentially any benefits you might get really hinge on getting decent quality powder and preparing it properly.
Hopefully this whole discussion is giving you, our listener, a much better understanding of what matcha is all about, why it has this deep traditional following, why it's having such a trendy moment now, and maybe what to look for if you want to try experiencing.
Well, true matcha. Yeah, definitely. And maybe just one final thought to leave you with, something to mull over. We talked about those hints from the research: stress reduction, cognitive support, metabolic links, all things tied to overall well-being. Could making a habit of preparing and mindfully drinking high-quality matcha be more than just enjoying a beverage? Could it be perhaps a small, deliberate act of self-care for both mind and body? Something to consider.